Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are around the world. Welcome to today's episode of Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer. Today I have with me Russell Miller, one of our PSTs, and I'm Lindsay Vellicina from Scrum.org, and I'll be your moderator today. Next slide. Just a few quick housekeeping items before we get started. This session will be recorded and will be made available within 24 hours. So keep an eye out for that. You'll be getting an email. So anything that you missed today, you can go back and listen to again later. And then you will be muted throughout this webinar, but please ask questions using the question box in the control panel. So you can see in the little picture there. That's where you type in your questions, and I'll be moderating those throughout. So if you have questions already, please start populating them. Pretty much the whole time today will be dedicated to Q&A, so please keep those questions coming. Next slide. Just a little bit about Scrum.org really quick. For those of you who aren't familiar, we are the home of Scrum. We were founded by Ken Schwaber, the co-creator of Scrum, in 2009. Our mission is to help people and teams solve complex problems by improving how they work through higher levels of professionalism. And we're focused on helping people learn through free online resources on our website and also activity-based live training led by our more than 340 professional Scrum trainers around the world. We also have our professional Scrum certification tests that allow people to validate their knowledge through our globally recognized certification. We support people wherever they are on their learning journey, helping them to grow. And I hope that today's session plays a nice part in that. So with that, I will hand it over to Russell. Get us started.
Thanks so much, Lindsay. I want to introduce you to myself for those who don't already know me. My background is in product development, both in the aerospace and automotive industries. And years ago, I transitioned from a physical hardware design, tangible product design, to software development and software product leadership. I currently help clients create value through custom product development initiatives and developing agile training. I implement agile process control mechanisms for clients. I'm a professional Scrum trainer, as Lindsay was kind enough to point out. I have experience in Lean. I'm a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. I also have experience as an IIBA certified business analyst, and I'm a member of the Order of the Engineer. I received my Scrum training from the man himself, Ken Schwaber, and also training in the product owner role. And I've also been trained by Jeff Sutherland and many others. And so I use the learning that I received from them in my many years now of experience to help individuals and teams learn how to be more adaptive and more responsive to customer demands and customer needs, and to help customers discern their own needs. I live in Atlanta, Georgia with my family, and if you want to learn more about me, you can follow this URL here and learn about what I'm up to lately. I'm excited to be with you. It's been more than a year since I've participated as the answerer for Ask a Professional Scrum Trainer. And please don't hesitate to share your questions. We'll do our best to answer all your questions live. But if you stump me with a really excellent question, then I may have to try to get back to you or make available through a blog or through some other mechanism a way to answer your question after the fact. Lindsay, what's our first question?
All right, so we have some Scrum Master questions here. So what is the role or responsibility played by the Scrum Master during releases? And how would the Scrum Master best guide the stakeholders during releases?
Good question. I'll take the last one first. In organizations where Scrum is not yet fully embraced or understood thoroughly, I think the Scrum Master's role in guiding stakeholders is twofold. One is the Scrum Master has an accountability to make sure Scrum is understood. So the Scrum Master has an accountability to make sure those stakeholders understand the principles and theory behind the Scrum framework, specifically around incremental development and potentially delivery, and also around the idea that we're going to make continuous fact-based decisions. And to make continuous fact-based decisions, we have to stop periodically and conduct some experiments. So the Scrum Master has an obligation there. In addition, the Scrum Master has an obligation to help the product owner grow his or her understanding of their responsibility for managing stakeholder expectations and fielding stakeholder requests and needs and questions. So to sum up, teaching, training, coaching stakeholders, but also teaching, training, coaching the product owner and working with the product owner to help the product owner expand their skill set to be able to meet some of those stakeholder needs going forward. In the future, the Scrum Master's role doesn't end, but we want the product owner to take a greater accountability for stakeholder interactions later, more so than he or she might do early on in the Scrum implementation. The first part of your question was, what's the role and responsibility played by the Scrum Master during releases? I've answered part of that in the training and coaching and helping others in the organization understand iterative and incremental development and what we call empiricism, making fact-based decisions. And then I would answer about the releases that the Scrum Master, again, needs to help the product owner understand the needs of stakeholders so that they can absorb and take advantage of the value that's potentially delivered in each of these releases. So, to sum up twice now, the product owner has a great accountability later if he or she is new to Scrum, and the Scrum Master needs to be coaching and training the product owner to assume more responsibilities for these stakeholder interactions as the maturity of the Scrum understanding in the organization expands. Looks like we have a couple of other questions, Lindsay.
Yes. So this question comes from Thomas. I'm curious about how design thinking teams and Scrum teams collaborate. Where is a good point to hand the work over to the Scrum team?
That's a really good question, Thomas. I think it's very much context dependent. And what I mean by that is it very much depends on the way your organization works. I'll tell you a couple of things that you might want to avoid. You want to avoid delaying the sharing of information with Scrum teams. That's one thing you want to avoid. So the handoff, we don't want to use that term to mean handoff of information. Handoff to execute is one thing, but we want to involve the Scrum teams very early. In fact, I involve coach and train to involve Scrum teams just after the vision for a product or a service has been, just after the first or second draft of a vision for a product or service has been identified. And that accomplishes two significant things. Probably the most important thing is that allows, because the vision is critical for a product or service, and so it allows you to gather more information. Gather is not the right word. Elicit or take advantage of the knowledge and experience of those on the Scrum team to help you shape the vision. So that's a primary huge advantage. The second advantage is that if you involve Scrum team members, the earlier you involve them, the more sense of ownership they have over the solution. And the Scrum team member's sense of ownership of the solution is of critical importance, because if you have people that are bought into the solution because they feel like they and are invested in the solution because they think they contributed to the crafting of the vision and also some of the product goals, then that's a great thing. When we shift our question to when do we start executing, right? When do we hand off for execution? Then I would suggest that the sooner the better. And why I say that is because that we learn more. We want to be leaning toward doing. And when I say that, I don't mean necessarily we're going live for all of our customers or delivering a product to all of our customers, but we need to be building things that, even if they're prototypes, that we can have real customers begin to use, even if it's in some kind of a trial environment, or not environment, a trial basis, right? Even if they didn't pay us full price for the product, we want people to be using our prototypes and early products as soon as possible, because the act of building the thing gives us an immeasurable amount of knowledge about the thing. And so the longer we delay getting what we might call feedback, real feedback, then the longer we delay being able to adapt. Because the ultimate goal is how, the ultimate measure is how our customers and our users of our product think about our product. It's great that our design teams and our Scrum teams think it's great, but the rubber meets the road when we put the product in the hands of our customers so they can begin using it.
Awesome. Thanks, Russell. That was a great question. So this question comes from Mohammed. How can we manage the scenario in Scrum when there's a big product and a few sub products, when it's like portfolio management?
There's a big product and a few sub products, like portfolio management. I'm going to, Lindsay, may I invite Mohammed to put another question in the hopper to like clarify that one? Maybe
Yes.
add some more details, because forgive me, Mohammed, but I can answer, but I'm afraid because I don't fully understand exactly what you're getting at, that I may not. I want to meet your needs and not just shoot
Okay,
words.
great. So Mohammed, if you could add a little more context there, that would be helpful, and then we'll get back to your question.
Thanks, Lindsay.
All right, some great ones in here. A lot of people putting in lots of information, get your advice. So this one here. So do you see the question that came in from Daniel, Russell?
I do, yes. Shall I read that?
Yeah.
More of an agile adoption than a Scrum question. We have products with UXs that have their own middleware services. Those products are then using back-end cross-product shared platform services that are being developed in parallel. The back-end services are owned by separate platform teams. Working software is the primary measure of progress. So I want to have a product team do full stack, small story slices. What organizational model and team responsibility model would enable this? Wow, that's a big question, Daniel. What organizational model and team responsibility model would enable this? So I'm going to try to give you be fair to you, Daniel. Let me consider that question, mull it over a little bit, if we can keep that in the hopper, Lindsay. Okay. And that may be something I'd be happy. I know this is a bit of not what you joined for, but I'd be happy to chat with you over some coffee virtually, because I think that is number one, I think that's a very, very specific question. It's a good question, but it's also one that I probably need some back and forth with you before I can't, it's hard for me to just give you, this is what you should do, without some interaction. So I encourage you to hang on, but if I share my screen again real quick, share screen, and I choose that slide, Daniel, you can see my contact info down here at the bottom of this slide, scrum.org/Russell-Miller. And I will keep your question, but I would love it if you would send me your contact information so that you and I can chat about that offline. I think that would serve both you, well, forget about everybody else. That would serve you better. And that's why we're doing this, is to try to meet your needs. So I'm going to pass on that one, Lindsay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. We'll connect with you offline then, Daniel.
And I will mention, Lindsay, that I just copied Daniel's question for my notes after class, so that if he does have the opportunity, if you have the opportunity to reach out, Daniel, then I'm going to percolate on that so that I'll be ready to chat with you when you have 20 minutes or so.
Perfect.
Thank you.
So this next question comes from Audrey. What's the best way to manage technical features? For example, performance.
What's the best way to manage the technical features example performance? Let me think about this. Best way to manage the technical features performance. Best way to manage performance. So let me give you a couple of high level things, and you may already be doing these, but if you're not, you certainly need to be doing those. So in Scrum, all the work that is needed for the product or the service that you're developing needs to be identified in the product backlog. And some teams don't fully understand how much work we can identify in the product backlog and think that we only put, like, say, features or major customer outcomes. But if there is work that is necessary to create a performant solution or to maintain a performant solution or maintain performance, then that work needs to be identified in the product backlog for 2 or 3 reasons. We need to have transparency among all stakeholders, and certainly including Scrum team members, about all the work we need to do. Number 2, it's not uncommon for product owners to not be, who have the accountability for managing the product backlog, to not be aware of all the work necessary to maintain performance and to create a performance solution. And it's not uncommon for product owners to not be aware of other technical requirements that the solution has. So it's incumbent upon those who do have the knowledge to include that information in the product backlog. So that's certainly a mandatory requirement, is to make sure those things are documented in the product backlog. It's also a requirement that when refinement is being performed and when the product owner is being engaged to share with the product owner understanding about dependencies between work items, which items need to come first, second, third, fourth, fifth, for technical reasons, it's incumbent upon developers to express to the product owner, wow, we need to work on this right now, and here's why. And it's actually a prerequisite to these other features or sub products that you, the product owner, are trying to create, because that information isn't always in the experience and brain of the product owner. So making them visible, bringing them to the attention of the product owner, and making sure that the order of those things are discussed during refinement are my 3 keys that I will share with you for that.
Great.
I did see a quick question about the canvas behind me, Lindsay.
Yeah.
One of the participants asked about that. This maturity canvas is part of the Scrum.org Professional Agile Leadership Essentials curriculum, and that particular class is geared toward leaders, and that would include Scrum Masters, but it also includes managers, senior managers, directors, senior directors, and sometimes folks from the C-suite. And it's not available. How do I say this? You can't simply go to Scrum.org's website and download that. But if this topic is of particular interest to you, then you're welcome to reach out to me at that address, and we can talk about how you might gain access to that. Not just the canvas, but some information about how to use the canvas with your organization.
Awesome. So Mohammed clarified his question
Right.
about products and portfolio management. He said, I mean, imagine there is a kind of big product and there are a few sub products which are belonging to that big product. But the most important thing that every sub product does is produce value separately. So how can we use Scrum in this scenario? So we're really talking about value delivery here with the family of products.
Yes. Let me repeat the thought here, and so I can percolate on it. Imagine there's a kind of big product and there's a few sub products which are belonging to that big product, but the most important thing is that every sub product produces value separately. How can we use Scrum in this scenario? So what I'm imagining is that we have, I guess the question I would have, and you don't have to necessarily answer it now, but the question I would have is, do we is there enough work on a sub-product to keep a Scrum team, let me choose my words carefully. It depends on the volume of work for the sub-products. So if the sub-products are so small that you could work on 2 or 3 of these sub-products in a single sprint and have a cohesive, integrated solution across the sub-products, they don't have to tie together. If they don't tie together, they don't. But if they do tie together, if there's work so that we can have an integrated solution across all the sub-products within a sprint, then maybe in your specific unique instance, you include all the work from the sub-products in the same product backlog, because you yourself have indicated, Mohammed, that they're part of a larger product. So I'm not, I don't want us to be, you're not doing this, but I don't want to be so dogmatic as to say, you must define a product in this way. Whether you imagine one product and a feature set, and you're working on different features in the same sprint, or whether you imagine one product and you call the smaller pieces sub-products, that doesn't give me any heartburn at all. What would give me heartburn or grief is if you're not able to if you're not able to have an integrated, potentially releasable increment of solution at the end of a sprint. That's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid working on 3 sub-products such that at the end of the sprint, we don't have an integrated or a potentially releasable solution across all 3 products. So you might include those sub-products in the same product backlog and create a sprint goal for your sprint that addresses the things you're going to do for each of those 3 sub-products. And would be my initial take, not knowing anything else. That's the way I would approach it, with the overarching idea that we want to deliver value at the end of each of our sprints for each of the sub-products we are working on. We don't want to bring in work for 2 sub-products and have those in a potentially releasable state, but also bring in work for a 3rd sub-product and it not be in a potentially releasable state. So I would treat them all such that ideally, as much as possible, we're in a potentially releasable state for all sub-products. Now, candidly, this isn't always possible, but that is certainly the goal. Thank you for clarifying, Mohammed. That really adds a lot of value to the webinar for you to give your additional color to the first question.
Awesome. Thanks, Mohammed. I hope that was useful. So the next question here is one that I'm sure you get a lot, Russell. I know we see this a lot. Any advice on how to coach team members that are resistant to shifting to Agile from Waterfall? How do I get them to follow Agile processes?
So I'm gonna, since Ken Schwaber's not here, I'm gonna give some advice that Ken gave me years ago, because I had the same question when I took my first training course from him. One of my colleagues, Joe Krebs and Ken, ran I'm going to shout out to him because I appreciate the opportunity that I had to receive training from Ken, and Joe was part of setting that up. And he's a fellow professional Scrum trainer, but that was in Miami. And we were trying to introduce Scrum at a company that I was working at the time. When I say we, I mean me and the team of people that very small team of people I was working with. And I asked Ken, how do I convince folks in my organization that these lightweight adaptive activities, and specifically Scrum, is what we should be doing, is the way we should be going? And he said, I'm gonna look into the camera, don't convince them. And he let it hang out there for a really long time. And we were like, don't convince them, I have to convince them. He said, just be successful. And if you're successful, when I mean successful, if you meet your customer, stakeholder, users' needs and are able to deliver solutions that satisfy them, then other people are going to come to you to want to know from you. Instead of you, I'm happy to be an evangelist, but it's great when people come to you to ask, because that means they already have a need in their head or their heart or both for the information. So we took that advice, and we were able to deliver an increment of solution in 4 weeks from another effort that had been unsuccessful. So the most important thing is to be successful. Now, having said that, you do need a nucleus of people who are willing to do this to get that success. So if you have a group of people in your very close circle of Scrum, you would want in the Scrum team who aren't convinced, then candidly, I would suggest you say, if you don't believe this is great, then attend a webinar like this and ask your toughest questions, or Scrum trainers I'm happy to, or other Scrum trainers like myself are happy to do a complimentary lunchtime mission, and they can bring their toughest questions there. Tell me why it won't work, type of thing. So we can offer those two solutions to people who are reluctant. I also would suggest, let me step aside from my desk. I'd also suggest there's no, I think those are the best two recommendations, Lindsay.
Okay.
I was going to recommend a book, but I think that if they're not convinced, they're not going to read the book anyway. So
I think you were probably right.
Yeah.
There's a couple resistance kind of related questions in here that have come in that were sparked from that question.
Sure.
So this next one from Avnish said, I hope I pronounced your name right, by the way. How do you deal with developers who see Scrum and Agile as micromanagement? Which is interesting.
Yeah, that's good.
I have widespread of different ages in his group.
Yeah, that's a great question. There's always a chance you're doing it wrong, right? That's always it, and I say that with a little bit of a chuckle, right? There's always a chance that's what's going on. This is not to point fingers at you, but some other people that they have worked with in the past may have been doing their best to try to use agile practices, but maybe in an environment where it wasn't well understood, and management wanted Scrum masters to act like nannies, so to speak, and make sure things are going well. I think what I would do is I would begin by majoring on the majors, majoring on the most important things. So the most important things are, candidly, you might start with the sprint retrospective, and there's no prescription, so this is not the only way you can do it. But if you start with a sprint retrospective and the idea that we're going to continuously improve, and we're going to collectively own our improvements, then with those two thoughts in mind, then facilitating those and letting people identify the things that are problematic, and trying to do root cause analysis on problems. That's two things. What are our problems? What are the root causes of those problems? And what experiment do we want to run to try to solve them? Then this is there's a fable about a boy who removed a thorn from the paw of a lion, and then the lion, even though it was a savage beast, befriended him. And so I use this approach sometime with reluctant team members. In other words, all right, Bob, let's collect everybody's current pressing problems, and we'll put them on the virtual whiteboard and put our names on them, and maybe you pick the person that's the most resistant and find out what their pain point is. And if we identify an experiment that leads to the resolution of Bob's pain point, then Bob's like, well, I guess if this is Scrum, maybe it's not all bad. And so I might start there, and then from there, you might, what's important is that there's an organizational requirement or impetus that we are in a potentially releasable state frequently. And that's what Scrum enables. And so if there's not a larger organizational imperative that developers are in a potentially releasable state very frequently, then it's it's in it for me, right? If I'm not compelled, if my organization doesn't care, we're only releasable once every 6 months or 4 months, then it's going to be hard to convince me to change what I'm doing if I'm already meeting the organizational demands. So those are two suggestions: is make sure, if, as far as you can, that the organizational impetus is on frequent delivery, and then consider starting with a sprint retrospective and trying to answer some of the design experiments to solve some of the naysayers points, and then you might get a little bit more warmth from them because they see that you're meeting their specific personal needs for problems to be resolved.
That's great advice. This next question, still kind of in similar realm. What are some of your recommendations to deal with silos in the organization? So what's some advice there on really enabling that cross-team collaboration?
I have on the good news for you is I've seen this, and I've seen it in more than one place, and this is it's a challenge for the people trying to execute, but it's a challenge that requires some leadership action, some management, senior management, director level action.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Scrum Master is an organizational change agent. So what you can do if you're on a Scrum team, whether you're a Scrum Master or not, is you can make these alignment gaps transparent. In other words, you can make it transparent that this team's annual objectives are inconsistent. I didn't say opposed. I just said inconsistent with this team's annual performance objectives. And the question I often ask is, in product development, is with others that we have to interact with. I'd ask this to our team, or in my head, I don't ask them, but I think to myself, or we talk in the team, is if we fail, if we're not able to successfully deploy, deliver, satisfy our customer needs, how is this silo affected? Can those people in that silo still get whatever raise they were hoping for or whatever promotion they were hoping for if we fail? And if the answer to that is yes, then there's an alignment problem. And I would make that transparent to leaders, and do it in a productive way. In other words, don't just bang on somebody's door yelling about this place is all messed up. But another thing you consider doing is identifying some potential things that could be done about that. And ideally, there should be a skin in the game for other silos if a particular product development initiative doesn't succeed. Now you can suggest in your culture and in your organization what skin you think they should have in the game. Maybe the skin they have in the game is they need to attend sprint review events, and so they can hear about the problems the Scrum team ran into, and be in the presence of other stakeholders for that product. And so it's one thing to read about something, read about a car crash, right? It's another thing to be in a car crash. So it's one thing to hear in the comfort of your own home or office that this product development team's having a trouble. But if you have to sit in a sprint review virtually or in person and hear field questions from stakeholders or customers or leadership in your organization, if you're in one of those silos, it creates a sense of obligation and accountability that simply hearing about it doesn't. Now, I'm not blaming the silos necessarily, because most of these silos don't operate independently. I mean, they may operate independently, but what I mean is they don't get to do whatever they want. They're governed in some ways by the larger organizations. So to give you a specific analogy, if I go into a fast food restaurant and I don't get good service, I don't think it's the person behind the register that I have a problem with. I think it's the manager, because the person hasn't been adequately trained, unless the person's only been on the job a week. I think that the management of the restaurant has, the manager or assistant manager, the management team has the problem with not training people. And so make them transparent and try to get those people at your sprint reviews. Ideally, those people have some kind of a skin in the game of your success. Ideally, they don't get the same bonus or raise if you fail that they would if you succeed.
Great. That's a really good answer.
Well, it's a really great question, I thought.
Yeah, that should be useful for many people on this call. So this next one is, so kind of talking about that Scrum Master again, could you please talk a little bit about the coaching and mentoring stances of the Scrum Master and kind of talk about the differences between those with some examples?
I'm thinking, talk about the coaching and mentoring stances for the Scrum Master, especially the differences by an example. Well, in our Professional Scrum Master training, we talk about some choices that a Scrum Master has when interacting with people or problems. And then in our Professional Scrum Master 2 course, shameless plug, Lindsay, I'm teaching one next week. In our Professional Scrum Master 2 training course, we specifically talk about what we call stances. In other words, ways in which Scrum Masters can interact. So in our Professional Scrum Master 1 curriculum, we identify 7 specific choices that a Scrum Master has. That's not stances, that's choices. And among those are a choice to coach when a Scrum Master is faced with a challenge. There's a choice to teach. So maybe coaching and teaching are significantly different. Teaching is filling an information or knowledge gap in someone's head, and if you do it well, it fills a gap in their heart as well. Because my training is in engineering, and you can compel some people with intellectual facts, but if you want to compel them to action, you need to engage their heart. And I don't mean playing them a sad song. I mean making them feel like there's a need for them to take a specific action or a different action. And coaching can mean a couple of things. In the Scrum Master context, I often use the analogy of a sports position coach, someone watching the athlete perform, and then right after they've performed, I don't mean after the game, I mean in practice, we watch a defensive lineman rush the quarterback or try to stop the running back. And then right then the coach steps in and says, this is the stance you should use, or this is what you should do with your arms. And so those are 2 choices a Scrum Master has. A Scrum Master also has a choice to call people and team members up to higher values beyond showing up to work. And when I say showing up, I'm logging in if you're working remotely. So for instance, do we have some company values that we hold dear? Do we have are we trying to adhere to the Scrum values? What are those? And do we need to be reminded of those? And the answer is yes, frequently. We do need to be reminded of those. Or what's the sense of mission, or the mission, not sense of mission? What's the mission for our organization? Why does this organization exist? What's the mission of our team? Why does our team exist? So that's a choice that we call Point North, which we borrow from Toyota. And it's a sincere form of flattery. And so those are 3 choices that a Scrum Master has. And we'd be thrilled to share some more of those choices with you. If you reach out to me at that Scrum.org/Russell Miller, I'll point you to some options you have for learning about not just the choices, but some of the stances. But that's a bit of a highlight, Lindsay, for two of the common coaching and teaching, and then a little less well understood choice for pointing north.
Right, and we do have a white paper on the stances of the Scrum Master, so I'll be happy to drop that in the chat here shortly after we get to this next question. So I'll get that to you guys shortly. So next question, what is the best way to stop the stakeholders consistently requesting work to be added into each sprint that is currently underway and giving tight deadlines?
Well, this one's not as hard to solve as you might think. One approach is to during the sprint review, when you have stakeholders present, then you tell them about the upcoming sprint, and you tell them that, when I say you, I'm not prescribing who. Product owner actually should be communicating this probably, but I don't have a hard and fast rule about that. But to communicate that we see that you, the stakeholders, have a need for some quick responsiveness during the sprint, and we have just determined a way that we're going to try to be more responsive, and that should please people. And so when you go into sprint planning, then you bring in less work, with the idea that actually what you do is you identify work on the product backlog that is known unknowns for the sprint. We know we're going to have something pop up. We don't know what it is yet. Estimate the size of that and bring that into the sprint as a placeholder. And then when you're 2/3 of the way through the sprint, if nothing has come up, then you engage with your stakeholders and tell the stakeholders, look, do you want us to bring in this other work and us not have room for any additional pop-up work? When I say additional work, I mean other work that's not this, instead of this known unknown work, or do you want us to reserve that capacity? Because if we reserve the capacity, then the amount of work we get done is going to be output, at least. The value may still be high, but the output is going to be less because we've reserved some capacity. And if we don't ever use that capacity, then if we could get 20 units of work completed, but we reserved 3 units of work for this known unknown, and it never materializes, then we only complete 17 units of work. And let your organization know, the people that are at the right accountability level make that decision, because often it's not intentional. Often the leaders just don't fully appreciate what they're doing to the team. And if you make this transparent to them and put them in the driver's seat, right? Look, we can give you consistently 20 units of work. I'm saying consistent, it could be 25, could be 15, but it varies. But I mean, we can give you 20, or we can start planning on 17 and reserving capacity. And then when those things come up, we can be responsive. And so this is it's not a Scrum team decision, probably. This is an organizational decision, but it's your accountability and obligation to make it transparent, so that you put the right people in the driver's seat for making that decision. Great question.
Awesome. Thanks, Russell. Next question here. What are the pros and cons of having one person serve as both a developer on the team and the part-time Scrum Master?
The biggest con would be some teams don't get that developer any Scrum training, and this is not, I'm not talking about anybody, you specifically, because I don't know who, your experience, but many organizations who don't understand the role of the Scrum Master will simply want to use a developer to perform that role, but also either don't want to train the person, or maybe the organization doesn't care, but maybe the person who's a developer doesn't really want to be the Scrum Master, or wants to be the Scrum Master, but they think the Scrum Master just runs meetings sometimes. And so part of the long-term success includes aligning a person's interest and skills with the job they're doing. And so you can have success if you have a developer who's really eager and motivated to learn about the Scrum Master role and motivated to do that role well. You can have great success. But many organizations hire people to do the developer role that don't have the interest in the same things a Scrum Master would have an interest in. And that's where you have a problem. And candidly, in my professional experience, most organizations who do this, don't fully understand what the Scrum Master is supposed to do. So it's a bit of a smell, like a cautionary signal that maybe there's some larger problems, for lack of a better word, and that this might be a symptom rather than a disease itself.
Right. And this next question is kind of in the same-ish category. If the Scrum Master does not bring any value for the team, does the product owner need to act like the Scrum Master?
Yeah, so I'm going to interpret some things, but I'm going to vocalize, Lindsay, the things I'm guessing. So
Okay.
I'm guessing that there are some developers who think that the Scrum Master isn't bringing value, or there's a product owner somewhere that thinks the Scrum Master isn't bringing value. And this is a larger question, candidly, and I'm not sure I can adequately answer it, but I'm going to try. The larger question is, what if anybody on the Scrum team is not bringing the value that's required? And so my first advice here is for someone who has a close professional relationship with that person to speak to the person privately. And here's why. If we should care about people, and I'm not joking, and I'm being real. We should care about people. So we should care about the Scrum Master. And if the Scrum Master isn't delivering sufficient value, then someone who's professionally close to that person should have some coffee, virtual coffee or lunch or real coffee, together coffee with the person and say, look, there's some people that think, and maybe if you're one of them, you can say, I don't feel like you're delivering as much value as you could. So now I'm going to correct myself now that I've just said that. Stephen R. Covey wrote a book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And I'm a strong believer that those habits are really influential and helpful. So Stephen Covey, one of those habits is seek first to understand. And so I just told you something that I'm immediately correcting. Don't tell that to them. Seek first to understand. Ask the person, if you're the one that has the close professional relationship, and I'll pretend Lindsay and I have a close professional relationship, and we're somewhere where people can't hear us, but we're in the break room, but nobody else is around. And I say, how is it going, Lindsay? And how's the family? And how's your mom? And we talk, and then I'm giving you how I would do it. And I would care. It's not just, I'm not playing her. I want to know. And then I ask her how work is going, and I listen. And maybe she says, it's been rough and it's been tough and I feel like this. And maybe she knows there's some problems. And maybe you do that the first time you meet with her, or the first time you meet with her to try to talk about this. Don't just jump in, Lindsay, I don't think you're doing as good a job as you can do. So try to understand from her perspective how she thinks things are going. And maybe that's all you talk about the first time. And because ideally, the ideal situation is, if I'm just using your name, Lindsay, but the ideal situation is that Lindsay is, if there's some challenge preventing Lindsay from delivering as much value as she could, the best solution is for Lindsay to do something differently to be able to deliver more value. So that's the easiest way. And then later down the line, if you find that Lindsay's oblivious or Lindsay's overworked or something's going to completely prevent her from ever delivering value, then that's a larger question that you have to answer at an organizational level, which is, what do we do in our organization when we have people who aren't delivering the value? So I would like to try to rehabilitate the Scrum Master, and I use that term tongue in cheek. Before I wouldn't go to try to do I wouldn't have the product owner or a developer do the Scrum Master's job. That's a bad recipe. That's a recipe for people sort of coasting. In other words, like, hey, I don't really have to work that hard because Sally's going to do my work for me, and I'll just chill out here. And we don't want that.
Yeah, I think that's really good advice. You don't know what's going on for the Scrum Master right now. So it's kind of good to go to the source first and see what's happening with them.
And another way, if I can jump in there quickly, is you can do some anonymous, in the sprint retrospective, you can do some anonymous scoring, Lindsay. And I wouldn't do that immediately, but you have to have a good culture before you can do this. But if you had a good culture, you could say, how do you think we're doing with our product owner, in our product owner realm, right? And then people anonymously can score 1 through 4. How are we doing in our Scrum Master realm? But that requires a lot of trust, especially if you have a whole bunch of developers, because all the developers are going to rate the developers well. Or if you have 8 developers, you could say, all right, we're all going to have 8 different cards, and you're going to think in your mind of a different developer, right? And so you're going to rate the developers 1 through 4 how they're doing, but they're completely anonymous, right? So if you have those 8 people times 8 cards, 8 8s are 64. So you can see at least if one developer is not pulling their weight and a bunch of people think that, then you don't, how do I say this? If you have like 8 ones, then there's a good chance all those developers are talking about the same person. There's not guaranteed, but there's a good chance. And even if they're not, at least we know 4 of them are probably talking about the same person, and 4 of them are talking about a different person. So these things just give us an indication. So if you did that with a Scrum Master, and you had 8 people, and then you had a product owner and a Scrum Master, that's 10. And if people ask, how are we doing with the Scrum Master? And everybody says 4, right? 9 people say 4, and then the Scrum Master says 2 or 3, then that would be horribly embarrassing, but at least it would be a good temperature check for how the Scrum Master is doing. So I'm going to be quiet and move on to another question, Lindsay.
Thanks, Russell. Yeah, we have time for 1 or 2 more questions here. So this next one comes from John. It's about dependencies. So how can external dependencies best be dealt with or avoided altogether? I find that the work of a Scrum team is frequently blocked by external dependencies, such as procurement of hardware, infrastructure, software licenses, network configurations, and general deliveries by people outside the team.
John, John O'Brien, loved your question. Thank you for participating and answering this question, because this is something that bothers me. I'm going to be brief, and you have my contact so we can follow. So briefly, this requires more planning if you have this problem in your environment. And so here's how you handle that. You, as much as possible, you identify the work in the product backlog, as early as possible. The work needs to be done. And specifically, I would suggest you have everyone on the Scrum team weigh in on, have a column in your spreadsheet or in your product backlog management tool, or a flag or something, and indicate risk of dependencies impacting delivery. And let's think about this. High, medium, low, or extra low, or something. Use 4, don't use 3, because people sit on the fence if you use 3. And then the items that you think that you identify, and oh, by the way, you need to identify that as early as possible. So you have a meeting and do a single pass through that product backlog and identify which items we think are risky for these dependencies. And so for the items that are risky for dependencies, the product owner wants to know that so that they can be ordered higher in the product backlog. And for items that do have these risks of dependencies, we need to decompose that work to identify the work of the dependencies. And so that we identify some of these individual, like work with XYZ procurement person to do PDQ, identify that specific work. And it's work. The work of identifying the dependencies is work, and then make sure that work gets ordered early enough, high enough in the product backlog so that it gets done or engaged and done by the time you want to do that other work. So this is a product backlog management and a coordination activity, and you need people, a person or some people on your Scrum team who you can depend on to do this. And it may be a different skill set than some, how do I say this? This may be, you can identify that several people to handle different ones, or one person to handle all of them, but that's my advice, and that's a fantastic question, John.
Awesome. Thanks, Russell. This next one may kind of sort of be related. What are some of the best ways to handle missing deliverables consistently in large organizations? I'm sure dependencies may or may not come into play here too.
Missing deliverables consistently. If you mean missing deliverables consistently in large organizations, if you mean, and you can add some color to your question, but if you mean missing like deadlines or delivery deadlines, then what I like to do is make those things transparent to the Scrum team and track each sprint. Did we accomplish what we forecast? That's a measure of our ability to do our work. And then did we complete a sprint goal? And I would train and coach the Scrum team to recognize that professionalism is an organization being able to depend on a Scrum team to deliver the things that they undertake. And if you're missing deliverables consistently, then, so number one, make it transparent and make the Scrum team aware that professionalism is aligning our forecasts with our ability. And so we forecast less so that we make sure we're able to do those things. And then I would use the sprint retrospective to try to identify some root causes. Many sprint retrospectives go right to solution and don't spend enough time trying to figure out why we have the problem. And in addition, in the sprint review, very tactical. I like to, it's not explicitly, it's not required. The Scrum Guide has become very lean and mean, but there was a statement that in previous iterations of the Scrum Guide was recommended, and I would still recommend it candidly, is developers explain what problems they ran into and how those problems were overcome. And so if you raise these problems to your stakeholders and tell them what problems we ran into that prevented delivery, and then you document those and keep a list of those, and then after the event, the product owner or the Scrum Master sends that to all the participants, and you track that sprint after sprint after sprint, then leadership really has a transparent view of all the problems and the ones that they could do something about. And then the Scrum Master and the product owner can work, and developers can work with those stakeholders to get them to use their influence to help eliminate the barriers that have prevented delivery.
Awesome, thank you. All right, I think we have time for maybe one more. Russell, do you want to look through the list here and see which one you think you'd be able to answer within 3 minutes?
Yes, I'll answer the last one first quickly. What's the path from being a Scrum Master to a product owner look like? It can be varied, but one of the paths is educate yourself on the product owner role. And Scrum.org has a lot of resources to help you, training and resources online for self-directed learning. And two is find a product owner that you can help. Find a team you can work on as a Scrum Master where you can help the Scrum Master. And candidly, it's about having the skills. And that's a great way to gain the skills. There's another question I'm going to try to read quickly. Service-based organizations where client is asking for estimates and manager needs specific times to get the budget plan prepared. A team is new and we don't have previous velocity, how to give estimates. I'll give you a quick suggestion. Get the Scrum team together, estimate what you think, how much work you think you have. Like this is the work we think we have, not the size of it. These are the work items we think we're going to have to build at a high level, and estimate how much time and money you think it'll cost to deliver that. Identify how much you think you have that is additional work. It's known unknowns, right? You know you have additional work, but you don't know what that work is. So you identify that as a percentage of the first work and add that to it. And then you identify how much work you expect for the unknown unknowns as a percentage of the work that was identified. And then you identify another amount for a contingency buffer. And so that's one hard estimate based on the things you know, and 3 other estimates based on working backwards, contingency and unknown unknowns and known unknowns. And there's some resources you can use to get some guidelines for that. Eric Uyghur, I think is his name, and forgive me, Eric, but Uyghurs. He does some great work on software estimation, and he can help you as a general rule know how much for those 3 you might choose, and then let your leadership decide. If they're going to let you decide, then they're your numbers and you make them as big as you want. And if they don't like your numbers, then they can use their numbers and they're accountable for the estimates.
Awesome. Thanks, Russell. So as you can see, there are still some questions here, Russell, that we did not get to that went a little bit deeper. So I'll share those with you after the webinar.
And maybe I can create a catch-all blog article, Lindsay.
Yes, I think a blog article is a great way to address these. So we will work on that to get those questions answered when we are done here. Just want to say thank you to everybody for joining today and bringing your questions. We had some great engagement here from the audience. And thank you, Russell, for offering your time for our audience here today. I'm sure it was much appreciated. And I hope everybody has a great rest of their day or evening.
And what I'll offer, Lindsay, also is that instead of a blog article, I'll just record a webinar and maybe even publish a time. And those who didn't get their questions answered could even join in a more interactive. Not that this hasn't been super interactive, but even something where people can turn on their mic. And so we'll see that.
Okay, awesome. We will be in touch with those details. And thank you, everyone. And
Thank you so much, Lindsay. Thank you all for your great questions.
all right, take care. Bye.